Before we begin, I'd like to just take a quick moment to let you guys know how much I appreciate the great team here at McCreary's Home Furnishings. They've partnered with me to make this show and podcast happen. McCreary's is unlike any furniture store in Sacramento. Not only do they carry the best furniture in town, they're also family owned and operated for 3 generations. Did you know that McCreary's also offers complimentary design services? That's right, the same services which could cost you hundreds an hour are offered all complimentary with purchase. I love my furniture from McCreary's, and I know you will too. Now, on to the show. To the Jerry Reynolds Show, and yes, I am Jerry Reynolds, and this is another podcast from the beautiful studios at McCreary's Home Furnishings, and have a special guest here that many of you know, Howard Burd, and we're going to talk about some of his background, which go a lot of different directions. And Howard, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to be in your company.
As it should be, yes.
It is.
But first of all, I mean, I want to get into your background, your basketball background. I know you actually have quite a history as a basketball player. First, where did you go to high school? And
I went to high school in the San Fernando Valley, beautiful, smoggy San Fernando Valley, and I went to Granada Hills High School. And a quick story about Granada Hills High School was when I was a freshman, I was trying out for the basketball team, and they said, "Hey, you got to run out and see this guy play football. He could throw a ball 90 yards." And I'm like, "Yeah, right." So I walk out there, and it was number 7, John Elway.
And he could throw it.
And he could throw 90. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And he played basketball, too. And I was actually, not to name drop it, we were friends.
Well, you know, it's amazing, too, with John, you know, being obviously such a great athlete, outstanding golfer. You see him on the celebrity tour. You know, really plays extremely well still at his age. And
yeah, my favorite John Elway story is he was a two-sport player. He was a baseball and football, and his dad was the coach at San Jose State at the time. And John could throw a fastball 100 miles an hour, but he knew John was going to go on to be in the NFL. So he told the baseball coach, "You could only use him for 2 or 3 outs if you're in the city championship in the 9th inning as a reliever," thinking, that's not really an issue. He'll never pitch. Well, fast forward, when John Elway was a senior, they were playing Crenshaw, 9th inning, up 2-1, bases loaded, and Crenshaw had a young man named Darryl Strawberry, who was a power hitter for the Mets and Yankees for years.
Sure.
All of a sudden, Darryl Stroh, the coach, goes over, calls a timeout, signals the right arm. John Elway comes in, bases loaded, 2 outs in the 9th, and 3 fastballs, strikes out Darryl Strawberry, and was the only player in the history of Los Angeles to be the MVP in football and baseball. Now, and he was a great basketball player, too.
Yeah, he was wasn't he drafted high in baseball?
Yeah, he was.
Was it Yankees or?
I believe it was Yankees, but he used that as an excuse not to play with, I believe, the Colts at the time.
The Colts, I think it was, yeah.
And he ended up getting drafted by. So he was one of the first athletes that determined his own destiny.
Yes.
Kind of thought it was kind of a spoiled move, but, you know.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I think, you know, Eli Manning played it years later, so it's not, you know, and I have to say it, you know, you wish athletes wouldn't do that, and yet I can see some reasons for them to. And often it works out for the teams themselves, even the ones that lose them. So,
you know, high school was an interesting time because you asked about my high school career. They had a rule in my school that if you're a freshman, you could not play varsity. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was about 6 feet tall, and I thought I was a pretty good player. You know, I made some travel teams, and my dad set up a meeting with the coach, and he said, "I think, you know, we might not." My dad did a John Elway, actually, and said he might not go to school there if he doesn't have the opportunity to try out. If he doesn't make the team, no problem, but he should at least try out as a freshman. And the coach kind of laughed it off. And he goes, sure, he could play as a freshman. Well, I showed up as a freshman, and I was now 6'4". And long story short, I'm not really a bragger, but you asked about my career. I got to be the starting forward on the varsity.
As a freshman?
As a freshman. Now, that's a wonderful experience, except I was 17 years old playing basketball with seniors that grew up together, and now I took one of their best friends' starting positions.
Well, I hope you weren't 17-year-old freshman.
So, no, I was, how old? I was pretty young. I was 10th grade started our school, not 9th grade.
Oh, okay.
So I probably was
sophomore,
about 17.
So,
sophomore was a freshman back then. And I got to tell you, I got a lot of cold shoulders from my teammates. So socially, it was extremely challenging, especially when I had to call my mommy for a ride home after practice. But it was a great experience playing against.
No, I went through some of the same thing as a sophomore. As a starter, and quite honestly, I think I was the best player on the team. But I'd taken a senior's job, and then two or three other seniors. Obviously, had been buddies and had grown up together, and so it was a little.
Yeah, it was a little tough transition.
A little tenuous, but.
Matter of fact, my favorite story is I was at this party. I was lucky enough to be invited, and there were a lot of seniors there. And there was an odd group of people at our high school. They wore black leather jackets, played no sports, and they were really into motorcycles and muscles and tattoos, and nobody talked to them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you weren't into muscles.
No, I didn't even get invited. And I was at this party, and the guy whose spot I took, who should have been playing the forward on the team that I took as a freshman, his best friend was this big kind of assholey football player named Don, and I won't name the last name. And he came up to me and started pushing me around. And he said he wanted to fight me, and I said, "Are you fighting me just on the reason that I outplayed your friend, and now that's why you want to beat me up?" And he said, "Yeah, meet me out there." And you know how it is in high school; everybody gathers outside, and there's a fight. And I was gonna get my ass kicked because I was 6'4" and I weighed 170 pounds, and this guy was about 6'4" and weighed about 270 pounds. So I knew for pride I had to go out there and fight this guy. And thank God I was watching some, Bruce Lee movies, and I think I knew self-defense, but I might have died.
Yeah, that could have been it for you.
It could have been it. And then I walked out there, and he was a no-show. And I said, "What the hell is this?" And someone took me aside and said, "That guy, Tom McLean, who's the leader of that gang, he was at the party, and he went up to that guy, and he said if he laid a hand on you, he would not be going to school the next day."
Oh, so you had a friend you didn't know you had.
So it reminded me of that movie, The Bodyguard, where the guy befriended, and I didn't even know, like you said, this guy was my friend. And ever since that day, him and I have been in contact and best of friends. And it was like a great story.
Through high school, did you play any other sports besides basketball?
I played tennis, which was a lot easier. But back, when I played, I really loved basketball. I loved to study the game. I loved to break down tapes. I had this crazy coach when I was 10 years old to 14 years old. He took me on trips where we scouted other teams.
Jeez.
And it was a rec league called the Northridge Knights. And we didn't lose a game for 5 years.
Wow.
And this coach was serious. And he saw me playing outside one day and asked if I could be on the team. And he taught me the game of basketball, even though my dad was helping me individually. He'd pick me up. But my favorite part of with him is he'd take me to get a jumbo jack after every practice, the coach. And that was my contract.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, but I mean, now have you stayed in touch with him over the years?
Matter of fact, it's funny. About 10 years ago, I asked my mom, who lived at Sun City, I said, I want to help find him to kind of thank him for all the mentoring he did for me. And he moved into her neighborhood because she was in charge of the neighborhood patrol. And I haven't talked to him in 25, 30 years from Los Angeles. So yes, we went out to lunch and I thanked him, and he said he was been following me in my movie career, and it was just a really nice way. I really believe in, if someone made a difference in your life, of letting them know they did.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think, everybody probably grows up and there's that special someone, teacher, coach, besides parents, that has a real impact in their life.
And Jerry, this brings up a point. I was thinking about maybe it's time to adopt me as your grandson. I really appreciate that. You've been a big influence to me at Starbucks.
That's been really a goal of mine to adopt you.
I'm ready.
Because I've got a little room set aside that we can
in the garage
that we can nail shut. So, yeah, I think Mrs. Reynolds, she'd love to have you around on a daily basis.
We can watch the games together. We'll break them down.
Well, I was going to say, I've always said, when it comes to kids, I can barely tolerate my own, much less somebody else's. But,
I agree.
So, there's that challenge. But then, now after high school, where did you go for your athletic pursuits?
Afterwards, I made an odd choice. I had an offer to go to UC Santa Barbara, but this school came calling. It's now Texas A&M. It was at the time West Texas State University. But what intrigued me, they were in Division I at the time, and they were in a league with Wichita State, who had Cliff Livingston and Antoine Carr and Dreiling, and Wichita State was number 1 in the country in the Missouri Valley Conference.
That team, sure.
And of course, the next year they were on probation because they were all driving Camaros. But I wanted to kind of do something different.
Mo went to West Texas.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah, one of the all-time great.
And a great guy too. I got a chance to meet him. But I thought it would be a unique opportunity. It was a little shocking when I got off the plane and everybody's wearing Wranglers and big belts and cowboy boots and hats, and it was from a California kid to that. It was a interesting transition.
Yeah, kind of a little, yeah, I'm sure a little traumatizing.
Very traumatizing. I think I was so homesick, I would call my parents like, come on, get me home. And God bless my parents. They're like, nope, it's free education. You need to stay as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I mean, as you said, that not going to Santa Barbara, and I mean, I'd have to think probably about 90% of the people watching would say, what?
They won like 2 games the year before.
Yeah. But it is Santa Barbara,
I know.
Well,
like you said,
campus.
We all learn and live.
Yeah,
that was not one of my better choices.
But I mean, I know West Texas. I mean, they've had really good basketball, and
it was legitimately. And I'll tell you, my career really went into perspective quickly. The first game we played University of Houston, and at that time they had a little crew called Phi Slamma Jamma, which consisted of Akeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Larry Michaud, Benny, someone came off the bench too that was even in the NBA.
Well, there was a Young was his
Michael Young.
Michael
and
Young,
he had guns like that.
Yeah.
So we're down by like 30, and the coach looks over at me. He says, "Howard, go in the game." And I'm like, "Okay, And I didn't really know these players too much, so within 2 minutes of the game, I'm taking a charge, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, these knees are on my chest and slam dunking on me. And the guy's running down, and I realized it was Akeem Olajuwon. But he was so bad that year because he just came from playing soccer and didn't understand the game, that the next year he was amazing. But on that flight, I never forget, I cracked out, I was an economics major, and I cracked the book out, my roommate. And there is truth to be told. Most college basketball players are PE majors, and they're not taking your hardcore studies. So I took out my economics book, and everybody on my team's going, what are you doing, man? What are you studying for? I'm like, my career just ended. Some dude just dunked on me.
You pretty well knew that there was not going to be big money in the NBA for Howard Burd. And yeah, as you said, I mean, I thought it was interesting with the Akeem Olajuwon, as you said. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't believe this, but obviously, like many great players, he came to the game late.
Yes.
And definitely was a work in progress. Wasn't heavily recruited, just kind of begged Guy Lewis at that time to take him on. And then, each year just amazing
I asked him
progress.
The next year, I said, "How did you improve so much?" And he just looked at me and he said, "I worked out with Moses Malone every day when Moses Malone played for Houston."
But though, I mean, 99.9% of the people could work out with Moses Malone. It wouldn't make him Akeem Olajuwon.
No, he had 7 feet and can play soccer.
No, he was a great. It's Tim Duncan was another case like that. Really, basically, was a swimmer until his senior year, and went to Wake Forest. They'd recruited a couple other guys that everybody said would be the stars, and of course, he just made such amazing quick progress. And I've always said that people forget that he's like the so-called 14-year-old that's going to be the second coming of LeBron. 99.9% of the time, some guy that nobody knows will pass him by.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned youth basketball, and part of the reason I made the film Ballbuster was to kind of take my own passive-aggressive shot at how ridiculous we are as parents, thinking our kids will get them a trainer and spend hundreds of dollars, and they're the next Steph Curry, because they go outside and practice these 35-footers, and they can make 2 of them with no one guarding them on my neighbor's hoop. So I'm gonna spend $500 a month and get them the training, and I'm gonna get them those $250 shoes, and they're gonna be in the NBA.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that, and then all the traveling teams and all that.
Right.
And I'm a believer that most young people should play because they love it. Play all sports.
I agree.
There's no way you can identify greatness at 14 years old or 13 years old. I mean,
you show me one kid that has played all year round and ask him how much he loves basketball.
Yeah, at some point the burnout happens.
They burn out.
And I mean, I always look at the Michael Jordans, who was a late developer.
Right.
He was not heavily recruited till his senior year in high school. Larry Bird, same way. All kinds of guys were considered better than them, and then you see it in today's game as well. I mean, obviously there's exceptions. LeBron James is the exception to every rule. But then again, and that's the old high school. Let the kids come on. Well, that's fine, but they're not LeBron. Most of them really will belong in the G League for a couple of years. To develop. Yeah, even Kobe, it was his 3rd year. Kevin Garnett's 3rd year before they really had an impact.
Right, Kobe was shooting air balls.
Yeah, he was
in the
not,
playoffs against Houston.
He's obviously one of the all-time greats, but still, it took him a while. LeBron James was a star day one. 18 years old, stepped on the court.
What was interesting about growing up was my mom was a teacher. And so she was very into studies, and my dad was very into athletics. Mm-hmm. So it was clear that there was no misunderstanding that my mom basically said, if those grades aren't there, don't even think about playing. Mm-hmm. So I was not catered to. And my mom was great because if I thought I was hot shit because I was on the 10th grade varsity, my mom refused to have any kind of ego and any kind of braggadocious nature, and always taught me to be extremely humble. And she would take me aside and just go.
Yeah, when did that go away?
That's one of my.
I mean, I need to talk to your mom. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting though. I think one of my favorite things, if I ever do get a compliment, not from Jerry, of course, but other people, if they do say it's one of my favorite things, is which is kind of weird if you're bragging about being humble. I don't know how that works, but I do feel like, especially in the motion picture business, I meet so many people with immense egos that I always try and focus on the film and the progress of it, and not so much. And my partner Mark will always say, I say, what's best for the movie? Mm-hmm. Not for me, not for you. What's best for the movie? So when you make it about other people, you usually have success. When you're focused on yourself, usually success is hard to come by, or it's very short term.
Well, I do think too, people, around sometimes they kind of build off that. Their egos, it's a little harder for them to be as puffed up about themselves, when they realize that, well, this is not this guy, and everybody's got to kind of fit in. And but I mean, it's also true is that big egos exist, And
I just think people, there's a blurred line sometimes with those people, and I feel like they don't understand it's what they do, it's not who they are. Mm-hmm. And so when people misidentify their success as a person and how they treat other people, if they have business success, they don't really understand. It's just you could lose that job tomorrow. Well, and then what the hell are you going to do?
Well,
so you better.
Yeah, it's like athletes. I always said, in the NBA, you see guys come in and, young guys, and they're just great as young people and working hard and all that. And in some cases, about 3rd, 4th year out, they get the money and they change.
Yeah.
And not for the better. And now, not in all cases. I mean, some really get it, but it's just, it's human nature. I mean, some people can't handle success.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because what I've learned is sometimes I ask myself, like, the demands I get from like some people's writers or some actresses' writers, and what I came to realize pretty quickly is that when you have 10 people, you have lawyers and agents and managers and just your wardrobe person, they all revolve. You're paying them, so you have 5 to 10 people on your team kissing your butt. And guess what? You are going to get full of yourself unless you can unless you really know that's just part of the thing.
Yeah, why don't we get 5 or 10 people kissing our butt?
First of all, I'm very tall, so it's hard to find
a
those
little
people.
harder to do.
But I'm too cheap.
I'm
I don't want to pay him.
I'm kind of hoping my wife will kind of treat me a little better going forward here. I mean, a little bit of that.
I could always get you on one of those 90-day fiancé shows. Overseas, you can go overseas. Too much work. Too much work.
No, yeah. We won't do that.
We don't want it.
But now, I know you played for the team that plays the Harlem Globe Trotters for a period, right?
Yes.
The Washington Generals.
The Washington Generals, the world famous Generals.
Yeah. I want to tell you, I've always said that was that coaching the Washington Generals has to be the best job in America. Not about the money, because that's the only job that you could get fired if you win 2 in a row.
I'll take it one better. The only better job is playing on the Generals, because you don't have to win, and they want you to shoot every time you get the ball. But more importantly, you don't play any defense.
Well, and that was the natural for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So people ask me, because the Harlem Globe Trotters at that time were the Washington General. It was a team together.
Sure.
And so the Globe Trotters own the Generals. So people always ask, like, how the hell did you get on the Generals if it's an East Coast thing? And so it's a really funny story. If I could tell you a quick 1-minute story. I was working at the time for Chrysler Motors up in Ventura, California. And on Saturdays, I'd play basketball with all my friends, and they're all ex-college players. And I get one Saturday, and it's outdoors, it's nothing fancy. I get this little tug on my shirt, and it's this guy, he's like 75-year-old redhead. And I'm thinking, this is creeping me out.
Is that Red Klotz?
Red Klotz. And he goes, son, I really like the way you play. I'm running some plays in the gym with my team, and I would love you. We're a couple men short because we only travel with 8 players. A couple guys have the flu. Do you mind filling in? And I'm like, well, what is it that you do, sir? And he goes, oh, I am the coach of the Washington Generals. And I said, like the Globetrotters? I go, sure. So I go in the Ventura College gym, and we run all these they call it show plays. So you basically pretend your thing, or they pull your pants down or some crap like that. And he says to me, after the practice, he goes, hey, thanks a lot. Would you ever be interested, if my players don't get better, we're playing at the Forum this weekend, would you want to play? Believe it was on a Sunday, and this was on a Saturday morning. And I go, yeah, but maybe you can give me like 10 tickets, bro, something like that. And he goes, sure. So he calls me up that night, and he goes, yeah, why don't you come down to the Forum? I got 10 tickets for you. So I bring my parents down, my friends, and we're in the locker room, and I go, hey, Red, like, what do you want me to do? And as I look out there, there's like 15,000 people out there. And I go, can you give me like some hints? He goes, oh, don't worry. You just get in, follow things. Well, I didn't even know, but I was starting. So he put me in the starting lineup. And I'm just like, okay. So I go, what do you want me to do? He goes, just play shitty defense. I'm like, easy for me to do. And shoot when you get the ball. And if they pull your pants down, just make sure you're wearing underwear. I'm like, okay. So I go out there and do the routines. And
well, that's pretty easy sequence to follow.
Yeah, I've never quite heard that from any coach. None that didn't get arrested. And I said, okay, that sounds great. I can do that. Well, I played the game, had a marvelous time, met Twiggy and all the Globe Trotters. And he said, would you ever be interested in playing long term? I'm like, I have a full-time job. I have a house. I don't think so. I was like 23 at the time, 24. And he goes, I go, but, just call me just in case. So 6 months go by. I get a call at my office. I'm up there in Ventura working for Chrysler. And he goes, hey, we're filming a ABC Wide World of Sports special. Why don't you come down, and that'll be your tryout? I said, like live on TV in front of the world, you want me to try out? And he goes, yeah, it'll be fun. And I'm like, all right, what the hell? So I go down there, and I just played my game, and I tried out, and I shot. But what was really interesting, afterwards, I had to go up to his suite, and there was 5 executives, because what I didn't realize is you're actually an ambassador when you're overseas to the world. You can't be a jackass.
Well, yeah.
And so you're representing the United States. So they asked you actually a lot of situational things. It wasn't really about playing basketball. That was maybe 40% of it. But hey, how would you handle this? Can you do a press conference? Can you deal with that? And so it was a lot of situational things. And he goes, okay, you did pretty good, and maybe we'll call you someday. I'm like, okay. So literally like 3 or 4 months go by, and he calls me one day, and he goes, yeah, you made the team. We have a couple openings. We want you to be on the team. Well, like I said, I owned a house and a job, and I said, look, give me 24 hours.
Did they ever mention salary?
No, I mean, I didn't even really get into that because I wanted to see if I wanted to do it first before I wasted his time. And something you have to understand about, my dad was an engineer for Hughes Aircraft Company for 45 years. Same job, same pocket protector, same 3 pairs of pants.
So he wasn't probably seeing the real value of you being a Washington general. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Put it this way: when I thought I was king shit, when I returned home from college and I was a senior and I graduated with a business degree, and my dad says, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Oh shit, I've worked my ass off the last 4 years. I figured I'd take it easy and just go to the beach." He goes, "What?" He goes, "You have 48 hours to get a job and you're kicked out of the house." Okay. So I slept at my buddy's house until I got a job. But I went to my dad, and my dad said the funniest thing to me that night. He said, "One day you're going to be watching the Globe Trotters on TV with your kid or kids, and you're going to regret not going on that experience."
Really? That's
And I said, "Holy shit." I knew my mom's like, "Go for it." You know, she was the adventurer. And I went home that night, and I called Red Klotz, and I said, "I'll do it." I went in to tell my boss. My boss says to me, he was kind of a cusser. And he's like, "You blank, blank, blank. I know you're going to the competition. I know you're going to Chevrolet. I trained you the last 3 years. How dare you?" And I said, "I'll tell you what. The LA Times is coming tomorrow and doing a story that I'm playing basketball overseas with the Globe Trotters. If that's true, you keep my job for a year at full salary. I come back and I get the job. Okay?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever."
Yeah.
And the next day the Times came and I was on the front of the Times.
So now, so then you went immediately overseas, joined the team overseas.
Yeah, South America.
But let's get back to the salary. Not to say any.
Yeah.
Was it somewhat comparable to what you were making?
No. I was making probably, again, I was 23. I was making a ridiculous amount. I was probably making $85,000 a year at the time. And I was at my own house. And of course, my dad talked me into renting 5 of the rooms in my own house, which is never a good idea to live there and rent 5 rooms.
Good idea.
But the salary back then was probably about $3,000 a month, 0 expenses, all travel paid. And that I just said, for the experience and the stories that I got from that. And I kept a journal every day. And when I wrote the movie Ball Buster with Marcus Allen, I went back to that journal and I told him some of these stories, and we'll talk about it when he's on here, because no one will believe this stuff happened, but I had it in my journal, so it was so easy to write that movie.
So have you ever thought about writing a book or?
Well, I wrote a movie called Ball Buster when it comes out.
But I mean, the Howard Burd experience with the Washington Generals.
I don't think people really care that much about my general experience at this point. But maybe later, more about my journey in the film business.
Well, I mean, I do think, though, I mean, I agree it probably, but I mean, I think from the standpoint of a lot of us, you know, have no background into what it is to be a Washington. We all know the Washington Generals as the foils for the Globe Trotters, but really, you know, what's a Washington General do on a daily basis, you know, and all that sort of thing?
That's a good question. What I personally did is I looked at it as my chance to see the world without a military position.
Sure.
So I took advantage. So you'd play every night, but the games weren't until 8 o'clock at night. So I had 2 travel partners that were both immense human beings. They were both about 6'10" and loved to travel. So I got free tickets during the day, and I went out and I really tried to get the culture. And then more importantly, we tried to invite people that we met to go to the game. And then afterwards they would take us out and really see the culture.
So you're kind of conning.
I was maxing
free meals and drinks is what you're telling
Exactly.
me.
But I wanted to see how people live, just not the tourist stuff that I saw during the day.
Yeah.
So I really use it as a way to really understand these wonderful places, and wasn't sure if I was ever going to get the chance to travel there again. And that's what I loved about the experience, was the camaraderie with the fellas, the traveling, the playing I could care less about. Although one day was kind of funny. I walk out there and there's 50 kids that want my shoe. We're playing at this arena in Mexico City, literally made out of stone. The baskets, they had leather, just like little leather nets and the court was stone in this beautiful arena built out of just no concrete, stone by stone.
Wow.
And all the poor kids were up above that couldn't afford. And afterwards, I said to my buddies, I said, God, I think I'm kind of might be a celebrity out here. Everybody wants my shoes.
Well, yeah, they wanted to sell.
No, they wanted them for their own, man. They didn't have shoes.
They didn't have shoes.
I go, thanks,
Yeah, they
Twiggy.
don't. They said, yeah.
They're like, they want my shoes. And they're like, no,
Who's that
they
guy?
need
He's got shoes.
They need shoes.
Well, that was kind of an eye opener for you. I mean, at least
That was a little bit of a letdown, but thank God I was humble.
so. During your actual playing of the game, I mean, was it tough sometime just to be the total foils? I mean, you realized you had to, and I mean, you couldn't steal a ball or block a shot or so.
I hate to refer to Ball Buster, but there's a scene to answer that exact question. And the question is, how do you go from playing Division I basketball, which is a business?
Sure.
It's 8 hours a day playing, studying, filming, off season, even during the season when you go on a road trip and you play a Tuesday, Thursday, our coach was brilliant. And he said, why don't you take Monday, Wednesday, and Friday off and just maybe miss the whole week of school? And so not a lot of priority on the scholastics. So when we were traveling around, it became pretty evident of a lot of people could not make the transition from being a college basketball player to letting someone dunk on you or getting your pants pulled down.
Yeah.
So people, a couple of times, they had a rule: if you ever did a flagrant foul and injured somebody, you will get kicked off the tour. Mm-hmm. And a couple of times we had people kicked off the tour because they got so frustrated getting dunked on. Because the reason why the Globetrotters always win, because in your contract, if they yell a show play, you have to let them score. So you could be shooting 80% that night, and you could be up by 15 points, and these assholes wouldn't let you win. They'd call 10 show plays in a way and get 20 points in a row, and you'd lose.
Yeah.
Well, one night we had a guy that couldn't take it anymore, and Twiggy went up for a dunk to win the game, and he just low bridged him, and the guy got kicked off the tour the next day.
Yeah.
I looked at it as, and we had a lot of. That was a tough transition for a lot of people on our team. I was a little older, where I had been in the workforce for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Where a lot of players coming out of college, they
and the
couldn't deal with
competitive
it.
Scene, yeah,
I kept telling them, look at it as perspective. They're paying you to travel around the world. It's all entertainment for kids. People are laughing their ass off.
I mean, the people are coming to the game to see the Globetrotters.
Right, not to see you make a 20-footer.
Yeah,
so it's an acting gig.
Yeah, so you may be competitive, but you better leave out at the door.
Jerry, it is funny. I could be at a meeting with 5 celebrities 100 times bigger than me. But and I never really tell people I play with the Globetrotters, but if it comes out, oh my God, it's all they want to talk about.
Well, yeah, I think it's an amazing backstory, for anybody. I mean, because I think everybody grew up seeing the Globetrotters,
right,
and the Western Generals, and,
right.
And I remember, Red Klotz even played. He
had a two-handed set shot.
He couldn't play a lick, but he was out there playing.
He was funny.
So I mean, it's a wonderful, and I mean, I think the enjoyment of the Globetrotters when you're a kid. I mean,
sure.
You think that they are, one of the best teams in the world. By that time, I mean, they were at one point.
They did have.
They were
great
at one
players.
point back, before the NBA really got established and everything.
Red Klotz, he was a little old, so he wasn't really diagramming plays or anything. But he had one rule, and the rule is he did not want you. We had a couple guys on our team that thought, hey, I'm traveling the world. I'm kind of like, we had this one guy I swear it was Billy D. Williams. He had the sweet hair, the mustache. And so he would, every game, he would take business cards from the hotel. And back then he would call them bombs, which probably you can't say anymore. And he would just simply write, call me later, I'd like to see you. And what he would do is he would pass them out before the game to the best looking girls in there, whoever we were. So Red Klotz passed a rule and he said, no more of these bombs. If I catch you in these things, you'll be off the team. I'm so tired of this crap. Because we were getting a lot of complaints that they were doing that before the game. It was like too obvious. So this guy wasn't the brightest guy in the thing, but he was a good looking guy. So he decides after Red laid down that rule, I saw him in the lobby grabbing the cards. I'm like, dude, you can't do this. He goes, no, I got a plan. I said, okay, fine. So I look in the game. This guy's got a stack of cards in his goddamn sock, right? So he literally, that was his play, is after the game was over, he was going to pass them out. So he's playing with a stack of cards saying, call me later. So there's a routine at the free throw line, and we were at the Tokyo Dome in Japan. And everybody that night, before I got sick from some of the sushi they ate, and the guy that usually does the routine where they pull down the pants wasn't doing it. So he says to Billy D. Jr., hey, why don't you do the gig tonight? You're at the free throw line. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I just hope they don't do anything with the socks, because I know it's the pants. So sure enough, Twiggy, big 7'1" guy, comes up to him and just yanks his pants down, but in the process caught his sock. And there were 55 call me's all over the court.
So that was kind of the end of
that was his last game.
End of the old career, huh?
But it was so damn funny. And so you had stories like that every single night, especially when you had the language barriers and you didn't even know what was going on. I have 15 of those stories.
Now, how many years did you do that? 1 year?
I did it for close to a year.
Close to a full year.
Honestly, it was kind of the novelty was wearing off.
Sure.
Because I realized overseas what they did is they sold the tour to a promoter and you were at their mercy. So all of a sudden these guys would do 5 days a week, and then on the weekends they'd run you double. They do a matinee and a night game, and there was no, month after month of traveling. And we'd go to a new location every 2 or 3 days. So it was extremely exhausting with no breaks in between. I just said, okay, it's in my memory bank.
You got out of what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, obviously you knew that wasn't going to be your
He wasn't
career,
happy
to be a Hall of Fame Globe Trotter.
No, it wasn't.
Globe Trotter foil.
But life is based on experiences, and I just thought, my dad was right. That was a wonderful experience. And sure enough, about 8 or 9 years ago, my daughter and I were watching the Globe Trotters, and I was just thinking of my dad saying that to me. Like, he was right. I'm glad.
Yeah, no,
I did that.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's meant more to you than one more year working for Chrysler.
Yeah.
Not that wasn't a good.
I did have a free car.
Good gig as well. So,
Yeah.
So now after the Globetrotter experience, and I guess too, the thing I would come up with is obviously, I can't remember when I first met you, but you got me involved with some, I think, taxi.
Right.
Yellow cab commercials.
So my wife had a marketing company, and she said, we need a great spokesperson in the community. And I knew you. I don't think I did. Did I know you a little bit?
I can't remember.
I don't think I did.
I think that was kind of the first time.
That was our first moment together.
I believe so. Yeah. It was
our anniversary's coming up.
Kind of tears are starting to well up in my eyes.
Makeup. Yeah, so my wife my wife's a very smart lady. She has an advertising degree, and she started her own company, and they were looking for a spokesperson.
Yeah, you overkicked your coverage a good deal there.
I said, I'm going to go on the line. There's only 2 celebrities in town, Jerry and Marcus Allen, and Mark won't talk to me. So I'll go Jerry.
He was a little too big time.
He was a little too big right there.
Too big time.
I had to earn his respect.
Yeah.
So we weren't quite there. He did have like 3 shows.
Yeah, you don't go right to him. No.
I go, let me start with baby
talk
steps.
To his people first, and you had to get to his people.
Once I got through your people, I know you're repped by CAA, so I had to go down to Beverly Hills, negotiate a deal.
Yeah, my people is me. You know who that is.
I said, yes, Lay's potato chips are included. And Jerry's like, I'm in. And then Jerry and I, Jerry, I love spending time with Jerry because, I love basketball and I just think he's a great guy. So him and I have been friends for the last 10 years, and we go out to coffee once every quarter, and, it's kind of a fun relationship.
Really get Howard asked me tough questions like I'm going to really provide him inside information, which I don't have anymore. At one time I did, but I still didn't give it to him.
You didn't. Very stubborn. Like, so I won't even say anything. You can't say that.
But I mean, that was so basically you got into that part of the business through your wife.
I was just helping her.
At
that point in time, after college, and I got into the workforce. I really loved media. And I worked with Mark at Channel 31, and then someone made me a unique position at Comcast to be a West Coast sales trainer. So I got to teach people, which I always liked teaching and coaching. I got the opportunity to teach new salespeople how to sell, the cable advertising on ESPN.
I always remember Elliot Trushinsky, the general manager of Channel 3, is a good friend, and he had told some Howard Burd stories, but But all that being said, he said, Howard is really good at what he does. He's really good.
That's a good compliment from Elliot. He's one of my mentors.
Well, he's big time.
Yes.
He really is.
I love Elliot.
And I do too. I was just a special guy. But I was going to say that I told Elliot that I said, so you actually had Howard Burd and Grant Napier both under your wing. I said, you've done remarkable things.
Grant, just to digress to Grant, Grant amazed me on one capacity, that he was on the 10 o'clock news. His sports thing, I believe it was an hour news. Probably about 10:42 was his sports. And that guy would come in at 10:30, probably 10:40, where you have these reporters all day long working on their stories. Grant would come in there, shorts, shirt, tie, and he would nail it every single. I've never seen anything like that, and that really impressed me about Grant. And Grant, the thing I love about Grant, unfortunately in today's society, you have to have more of a filter. But man, Grant was just real. You know, I could go up to Grant and just be real with the guy.
I've always said, I mean, working with him for 20 some years and different things. I mean, he's just truly gifted. I mean, like you say, it's real knowledge. It's not something he has to spend a lot of time preparing. He knows. Yeah. And probably basketball isn't even his best sport. I mean, he knows hockey, he knows football inside out. I mean, I don't think I've ever been around a guy who had as much knowledge in sports. When we first started working, I remember telling people, I said, well, I have no doubt in my mind that I have a lot better background than Grant in basketball, and I feel like but by the end, it's like, I'm not too sure here. I kind of feel like he really gets it better than I do.
He's watched a lot of sports.
Yeah, and I mean, he just, like you say, you turn the camera on, and he's ready.
It's amazing.
Only guy I've ever seen. We could be doing a basketball game, and he could be watching Giants football game and not miss a beat.
Yes.
And I mean, and texting, and it's like me, I mentally challenged, I mean, I've got to focus. I got one thing at a time, I can follow the game and try to do my part.
No, I think multitasking is one of the most overrated things in the world.
Yeah, most people can't do it. I mean, I think they're...
Well, then they do it not as good as if they just focus on what they were doing.
I agree, and I think that's what always amazed me him. I think he didn't miss a beat, and I've never seen that. I've seen most people think they can multitask and aren't very good at anything.
Which is amazing how many more back-end accidents they've been, rear bumpers, people, since they could miraculously do so many things, including texting and watching
drive.
videos.
Don't text and drive. I got hit in the rear end about a year ago.
Me too.
Somebody. So quit it.
Stop it. That's PSA.
Yeah.
That's for free.
And probably the other advice I'd give, I walk all the time. And if you're a walker, assume that the car
does not see you.
Does not see you.
Yes.
And if you're going to cross a little faster.
By the way, I love when you're crossing before the car and they're giving you a look like you're the asshole.
Yeah, or just making it slower. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, the car is not supposed to hit you, but don't mean it won't.
Right.
And I've always said that my basically my rule I have on my walk. I go a lot of different places, but I like wide sidewalks, not close to the road. I just don't want to take any chances. If somebody's going to run over me, they've got to be serious about it.
That's committed. Matter of fact,
it can't be just an accident. They got to say, I'm getting that old guy.
I take it one step further. I don't even go into the bike lanes in Roseville. I go onto the sidewalk.
Yes.
So a cop pulled me over, policeman, and who I have ultimate respect for.
Yes,
and he said to me, what are you doing? And I said, my friend, I live 1 minute from Sun City and a high school. Mm-hmm. I'm not going in that bike lane. I'm on the sidewalks as safe as I could be.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's... why be closer to something 4,000 pounds
exactly
going 50 miles an hour?
They don't care about you.
If some of you just lose a little balance,
right?
It could be over. You could be, be a memory,
right?
A wonderful memory, but nonetheless, but a memory.
Not worth it. And that's our public transportation announcements for today.
So now, just some of the questions that always have with people. Some of your favorite movie stars. Through the years adult growing up, if you still have grown up. I mean,
No, but people that are older than me, no. My favorite star that I personally have worked with, or just
I'd
say
with and
I'd say unequivocally, my favorite star is John Travolta, because we did a movie together.
that was a terrific movie, by the way.
Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you.
really good.
We actually launched a couple big careers there. Dan Stevens, who went on to play Beauty and the Beast. Chris, I believe his name is.
Now, Michael Pitt was in that too, right?
Yeah, he's my least favorite actor I've ever worked with.
He's kind of.
Well, let me just tell you about Michael Pitt. And I'm not, this is fact, so I'm not defaming him, but in my opinion, what I have heard is that Marty Scorsese was so tired of him that he fired him and killed him off on Boardwalk Empire.
Well,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So he came to work for us because he was a package deal from his agent, along with Mark. What was Chris's last name? The actor?
Pratt?
No.
Fine.
No. In Criminal Activities, he didn't see it. But anyways, Travolta, the first night, him and I had dinner together. And, you know, he has kind of the Scientology background.
Yeah.
And I'm like you. I already know everything about myself, so I kind of want to learn about other people. So I don't know where this was going to go, but he's not a drinker. We were just having a wonderful time talking basic things. And then I got into Scientology with him. And I was just curious if he was going to open up about that. And he was really, and it wasn't to recruit me. I had bona fide questions I needed to dig down to.
Uh-huh.
And he was so open about it. He told me about the process, how they had to audit his wife, Kelly Preston. He told me about the good things, the bad things. And 2 hours later, it was like he put down the movie star John Travolta, and we didn't talk about Grease or Pulp Fiction. And we just really got into, you know, being father. And I know he lost his son, and I had lost my mom at that time. And we just had a real honest conversation that I appreciated, and it wasn't about PR. And so it was just a true joy. And my other favorite actor is, he's the actor everybody knows, but can't, you know, you have to point him out. So it was Richard Jenkins. Richard Jenkins.
Yeah, on the Seattle Mile, was it the name of the movie?
4 Minute Mile had
4 Minute
Richard
Mile.
Jenkins.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing about Richard Jenkins, so he was a stepdad, Step Brothers. He was in the movie, what else is he in, Mark? He was in Killing Him Softly. He's been probably 200 movies.
A zillion things.
Fantastic actor. Shape of Water. So the funniest thing is, I get the first movie I ever did, I get a call from Richard Jenkins. First thing in the morning. First day of shooting. I'm already nervous. I had no formal education up to this point on making movies yet. I was in charge of this $5 million movie. And he says, "Hey, Howard, I'm having a problem. I do not want to have," because it was a union where we had to have him chauffeured by a driver. And he goes, "I refuse to go to the set with this driver anymore." And I said, "Well, you know, I'm a little nervous. You know, he's like a legend to me." And I'm like, "Well, how come, Mr. Jenkins?" He goes, "You can just call me Richard." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "Well, the driver for the last half hour," because he was staying at the W Hotel, where I was staying at this little shithole outside in Renton.
That seems to be
Of course,
fair.
he had a suite there. And he said, "The guy has interviewed me for the half hour, and he's come to the conclusion that I am not worthy to be the coach in this movie."
Really?
I said, "The union driver has interviewed for the last half hour, and he has told you that you shouldn't be playing this?" He goes, "Yeah, of course I couldn't fire the guy because he's union." So he goes, "Howard, do you think you could pick me up and give me a ride home tomorrow while you figure this out?" And I go, "Okay." So again, no experience. First set, right off the bat, a problem. So Richard Jenkins, I give him a ride home. It was like an awkward first date. I didn't really know what to say to him. I was kind of in awe of him. And then he goes, "Hey, will you pick me up in the morning?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I pick him up in the morning. And at that time, he was doing a movie, Killing Him Softly, with Brad Pitt, and Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise. And because he's probably in his 60s, he has this wonderful experience of movie acting. They would call him every day. So I'm in the car driving a half hour. "Hey, Howard."
Brad Pitt's calling him?
Yes, Brad Pitt would call him. And I was totally
Can I talk to him?
No,
Can I talk to him?
I was doing better. I was like the shittiest eavesdropper while trying to drive. I should have worn a neck brace after.
Brad,
And then
hey, Brad, it's
he gets
Howard.
off the phone, and they're talking about Killing Him Softly, and then Tom Cruise calls him. I'm like, holy shit. So I was so excited. I was so giddy about it. And so we're driving back, and I go, he goes, you know, Howard, producers never really transport the actors, so I know you're kind of doing me a favor. And he goes, so I understand if you want to have someone else drive tomorrow. And I said, well, Richard, you know I'm kind of new at this, right? And I said, how about if you put all your calls on speakerphone in the morning, and then you could kind of educate me on producing movie from the actor's perspective, because it's all about getting the talent. And I had no idea how to do that. And I said, and we'll drive to work every day and I'll pick you up since we're going to be there anyways. And he goes, deal. So the next day I came out, he had a big Starbucks coffee for me. And for 30 days, it was like driving Mr. Daisy.
Wow.
We just came up with this great relationship where he kind of mentored me through osmosis. And I got to, of course, I never got to talk to Brad Pitt. But my God, I learned so much more than any USC $500,000 film school student could ever do. And that really gave me the foundation of connecting with actors, where I just decided to call the agents and did all my own negotiating instead of having lawyers do it. We had to reshoot one scene a month after the movie's made, and Richard, I gotta say, I love him and he's professional, but the star of the movie didn't like doing the reshoots, and he was bitching the whole time, the kid in the movie. And Richard, it started to affect Richard. So I thought we had a pretty good relationship, so I took Richard aside and I said, you're a pro, right? So why are you mailing it in? I said, you're better than this. And he just looks at me and goes, I taught you well. I said, go back in there, and he did it right.
And did it right.
Yeah, and so it was good.
I really, that's a terrific movie. And Kim Basinger, one of my favorites for years and years. You had her in a key role, and I thought she was terrific. Obviously.
We had the funniest thing about that, we had a huge star to play the kid runner, and it was my first movie. And I hired this guy. I paid him really good wages. He was just an X-Men. I legally can't even say his name. And I wanted to see what kind of shape he was, because it was a running movie.
Sure.
Mixed with running against his time was running out because his brother was a big drug dealer, and they had to kind of figure when both worlds collided. But it did have a big running component. So I said, I sent a trainer up to Canada to look at this kid. And my trainer called me and he said, I said, how's it going with him? And he goes, well, is the movie about a 50-pound overweight person that's a chain smoker? I said, it's a running movie. And he goes, and he snaps a picture of him and sends it to me. And I was like, shit.
Not going to work.
So I had to fire him. But of course, in Hollywood, because the agents made me pay him full boat, and I said, why would you make me pay you his salary when he was unprepared? And he goes, because I know by the time you litigate it, it's cheaper to pay him.
Wow.
And I said, fuck you.
Well, that sounds
excuse my
very,
language.
very similar to we're dealing with agents in professional sports. I mean, most of them just. Yeah. Anyway.
That's like, let's get reality. So I replaced him, and the kid in there, he went on to be in Walking Dead, and he had a TV series, and he was just it was a great move. But again, it's you live and learn. You don't personalize it and realize. And ever since that, matter of fact, he had a chance to be in Mother's Day, that kid, with the Mother's Day I did with Jennifer Aniston and Julia Roberts. And I said, no, I'm not getting that kid. And he missed out on probably a $250,000 payday, and he hasn't done anything since.
Is there any, I guess, are there agents you really prefer to work with, that they're fair, more realistic? Or
I'm going to have you answer that.
Yeah, actually, there are.
Really?
I mean, I always said
those last two words were
the majority of the ones that have a lot of clients are easier than the agent that represents. It's his uncle of the player, or a first-time agent's got one player or two.
Right.
But I always say, the guys that's got 30 or 40 and been in the business a long time, generally you can have a decent. I mean, they get the deal. And so it's a lot
the
easier.
agents I do like some of the agents, like at UTA, at Gersh, CAA. They play very hard ball because they're the top of the top. It's the lawyers that get on my nerves, quite frankly, and they seem to just muck things up. And a lot of times, what I found is the actors don't even know what's going on in the negotiations of the nitty gritty, because they have to basically prove that they're worth their 15%. So they'll be super aggressive at asking for unrealistic things. You just can't personalize a negotiation. The thing about being a producer is you have to wear your economic hat and your creative hat. Very few personalities I found in my life have those two components. Usually creative people are a little more out there, and that's what makes them great. And usually the business people don't have an ounce of creativity.
Right.
And the ones that think they do are problems.
You're right.
So I try and hire people that do what they do and let them do. But I do hold them accountable. If I feel, or Mark, my partner, feels they're not performing, we're going to have an honest conversation. And sometimes I feel it's my responsibility to coach them, to get them to be better. But if they don't have the desire, it's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like have you ever had, when you coach, how do you deal with a player that has the talent, but they don't have the ethic to get better?
Well, I mean, yeah, basically it depends on the circumstance too. When as a college coach, it was easy because you're the boss.
Right.
In the NBA, in most cases, you're really not. And the guy may be, the real problem guy may not be that good, and he may be the highest paid.
Well,
So that
that's
creates
problem.
a whole set of problems. I've always said, too, the thing that always struck me with contractual things, and I think it applies to about anything, is try not to sign a contract that, certainly in basketball, that you can't trade. In other words, just say the agent thinks this guy's worth $15 million a year, but if you say in your mind is, well, I know he's a good player, but I know at $10 million a year he could be traded.
Right.
But at 15, to trade him, we're going to have to give him something else in order to get the deal done. So, I think that's the part sometimes people don't think about. But at some point, or in your case, I would think, okay, this is what he's worth or she's worth to us.
Right.
And-
Well,
and-
I'll take it a step further. Not only do I do that, but I do a full analysis of if we get this person, if their salary is 3 times more than another person, will they bring in 3 times more?
Right.
And unfortunately, it's all about estimates, and people are very greedy on estimates because they want to get the business. So they'll say, oh, that movie's going to do 10 million overseas, when you know damn well it's going to do 2.
Yeah.
So you have to base it on realistic expectations more than estimates.
But because you've got to make a profit, right?
Well, it's all about, when Mark and I make movies together, it's really about, we want to give every opportunity we can to people to actually get their money back. That is imperative. And that's why I stopped making $30-40 million movies, because those people don't get their money back. The people that get their money back on those movies are the people that put all the expenses ahead of the people that put in the $30-40 million.
yeah.
The distributors, the sales agents, the movie theaters. It's the most cockeyed business I've ever seen, where the people that actually put up their risk get paid last.
Get paid less.
So one of our goals was, and when Mark comes on up here in a couple minutes, we'll talk about it, is how do you flip that upside down? How in the hell do you flip a system that's for 100 years of movie making, where these poor investors are paid last? How do you flip it upside down where they're paid first? And the only way to do that, I figured logically, was have leverage. But how am I going to get leverage if I don't have Dustin Hoffman and Justin Timberlake as my clients? Because those people have leverage.
Right.
But how you have leverage is you say, hey, I've got 5 movies I'm ready to sell, and they're all freaking good. If you want a shot at these movies, I need a different distribution deal. We got to make that happen.
Can you, like with some, say, top of the Travoltas or Kim Basingers, some well-known people, say, look, we got this movie, and we're going to get it done in a short time,
Right.
so that wouldn't affect, but we can only pay you this, even though that's less than maybe you'd get on another project, but you'll be available for another project.
And I'm going to bring you on as a producer soon, but let's take it one step further. Let's get a John Travolta where his fee could be $6 million, but let's get him for 4 days instead of 30, but in the contract, you could use him on the movie poster. That's how me as an economics person think, is how do we make it look big without having a huge price tag.
Right.
So like Apparition, Pollock, we didn't, because it's a horror movie, we don't need to have stars in a horror movie.
Right.
But I knew, and Mark knew, if we get a couple, it's going to be easier to sell.
Yeah, you get somebody that the average
Right.
fan, oh, I know. who-
Right.
Yeah.
However, if you want to make this movie for X amount and you do the numbers, that's the only way people will hopefully return their money. You can't give Kevin Pollak a 20-day contract, but you could give him some prime spots where in 3 days it could look like he's in 25% of the movie and the big parts. And again, this is important, in the contract, let him be on the poster or featured in the trailer, because a lot of times these agents do not want their people unless they're fully paid, because they know damn well you're trying to market them. So that's a whole other separate negotiation.
So yeah, but in a way though, it's isn't that good for the, for the Travolta or the Pollock?
Yes and no.
Obviously, they're being, highlighted without.
Yeah, but think about it. They rather be in $100 million movie
Sure.
on that poster than $750,000 movie
Yeah.
with their name on it, because they feel, and you got to agree to this before you do the movie. What happens if it's a piece of crap and you're on the movie poster? That hurts. That hurts
Yeah,
their
I know.
career.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's always and honestly, that's where people. I don't have a lot of experience at that time 8 years ago making movies, but I'll tell you what I do have: sales training. And don't think for a minute when you're getting agents or you're getting money. And I teach sales a little differently. I teach from the perspective of, I asked one thing whenever I would interview salespeople. I would say, what % of a sales call should you talk versus listen? And you know what do you think they would always tell me?
Gosh, I wouldn't have any idea.
They would say what they think I wanted to hear. So they'd say, 90% listening, 10% talking. And I said, okay, no problem. And this is so old school. I would take out a little pen and I'd say, hey, sell me the pen, will you? And they'd start. The pen is blue. It does this. It does that. It does this. And so after about a minute, I'd be like, whoa. Didn't you just tell me 90% was listening? You just talked 100%.
The whole time, yeah.
And they look at me perplexed. And I said, let me sell you the pen. So I'd take the pen back and I said, is blue or black more important to you? Is a ballpoint? Do you want it erasable? And so they would list things, and I would simply get the things that they wanted, and I'd match them with the pen.
The pen.
You mentioned blue, here's blue. You mentioned ballpoint, here's ballpoint. How many would you like? So by sales, a lot of times they think is an evil word, like it's the guy on Saturday TV pitching you the mop, when it's all bullshit and smoke and mirrors. But if you really understand what somebody wants, and why would you not buy it if you just told them what you want?
Well, yeah. First of all, the person wants a pen.
Right.
He needs a pen.
Right. And you want to
So-
match what he needs.
Yeah.
So same thing when I go to make a presentation. So for instance, I had a meeting once and I wanted to raise a couple $1 million. I knew this guy was very wealthy. And I said, what do you want to get out of producing a movie? And he goes, I've been trying to get my daughter in the movies for 15 years. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, and she can't get a speaking part. And I said, that's because SAG won't give you a card unless you have a speaking part, but you can't audition unless you've had other SAG experiences. He goes, yeah, that's exactly it. And I said, I will get your daughter a SAG, because there's a rule. You could Taft-Hartley somebody where you could go on the set and say, hey, Meryl Lee, you look kind of pretty. Why don't you say this for me? Oh my God, this is amazing. I want to put you in the movie. And there's a provision called Taft-Hartley where you could legally do that.
I'll be.
So, and he goes, well, how much would that cost? And I just looked at him, and I don't know why I said this, but one of my theories is you don't ask, you don't get. And I said, oh, it's $1 million a line. And he just looks at me and he goes, I'll take 2.
Wow.
And he gave me $2 million. And she had 2 lines with John Travolta in the movie.
Well,
and it helped her career.
I mean, when you really think about it, though, he is obviously what he was looking for.
Right.
It was the deal he wanted.
But if I would have went in there and I said, oh, my God, you get 15% and you're going to have your name on them. He didn't want any of that.
He'd been offered that kind of thing before.
Right. So
Sure, many times.
by taking the time and understanding first before I seek to be understood, that was more, we made more of a connection. So same thing when I do the movies. I try to understand what people need, what they want, what's the experience, and I see if there's a match, and then I give them that. And if it's not a match, I don't give it to them. So selling is really, it's an art form. And people, I think a lot of times are frankly, they're mistrained. And they learn out of a book, or Tom Hopkins or Anthony Robbins, which is more like preachers than actually good, solid business.
Yeah, almost like televangelists.
They are. They are. They're selling books. They're not. They're not selling you and your career succeeding. They're selling some system, gimmicky system.
Yeah.
So my sales training, I feel, has helped every point in my career. That's the foundation, and having the guts to try things that no one else thought you could do.
Well, I think that's your background as a general, as
Yeah.
a Washington general.
It is.
So to get more into the movie thing, though, I think we need to.
Yes.
This probably is a good place to take a break and bring in probably the most talented part of the dynamic.
Chris McCreary.
The dynamic duo, Mark S. Allen, and we'll talk some movie business.